Understanding Rat Body Language by Klarshin Goshen. To fully understand what a rat is thinking or feeling at a given time, you probably need to know at least a few of these 4 areas of information. The first thing you need to know is what the rat's body language, how they're acting, moving, and interacting with their surroundings, itself could mean. I'm going to go into the other 3 sections, how the situation, the rat's personality, and the rat's background can also help you understand your rat better. But first, let's go through the basic body language. Here are 2 simple infographics. The left one goes into more detail, such as ear color and position, fur texture, and whisker position. I'm going to go into more depth on most of this chart, except for ways to tell when a rat is sick. This is because symptoms differ depending on what's wrong with the rat. The most common and universal symptoms of a sick rat are piloerection, lethargy, and excess porphyrin around their eyes and nose. The right chart just interprets the rat's mood from the angle of their bodies. While the angle of their bodies is important, unfortunately they are not quite as extreme as they seem in this picture. However, it is easy to remember and understand the basics, and that if a rat leans towards something, they are curious and happy, but if they lean away from it, they are scared or nervous. Also, please note that the sleeping position, pancake rat, is included in both charts. Rats often sleep like this in the summer to cool down, but it could also be a good indication that the rat feels safe and comfortable. You can tell a rat is happy if they have ears that are pinker than normal, they are moving energetically, popcorning, a sudden jump into the air, bouncing or running in leaps and bounds, walking out in the open, playing, boxing and bottle rolling, grooming their friends, or swishing their tails. A rat willingly walking out in the open, rather than near walls or under furniture, isn't necessarily a sign of happiness, but it does indicate that they feel safe enough in the environment to be vulnerable. This is the same rat before and after playing. Their ears become pinker after playing because of the increased blood flow. This photo is from a study in which scientists tickled and played with rats until their ears were pink with delight, and then they photographed them to record their data. Happy rats have a way of moving that is both relaxed and energetic. They often put a little bit too much energy in every move they make. This is a video of a young rat playing with a cat toy. You can tell immediately that she's having a great time from just the way she's moving. She's bouncing around, leaping after the feather rather than walking. Overall, rats love being challenged both mentally and physically. Whether it's making them work to get their treats off a string, to catch a few feathers, or to get on the wheel, a rat faced with a challenge is most likely a happy rat. Young rats also love play fighting. Play fights use most of the same moves that adult rats use to assert dominance, but the quick, energetic, and carefree movements are what makes it a game. Young rats often spend hours every day playfully chasing, wrestling, and pinning each other. Young rats also love to wrestle with their humans. They lightly nip the person's hand while they're being tickled and rolled. They tend to dart away for short periods of time before they sprint back to stage another playful attack. In both these videos you can see the same quick, energetic, and carefree movements as before. Bruxing is when a rat grinds their teeth together. It could mean many things, but because a rat's teeth can grow up to 5 inches every year, and bruxing keeps their teeth short, it doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. However, if a rat is bruxing while being petted or snuggled with their friends, happiness is a good bet. If a rat bruxes with enough intensity, it causes the muscle behind their eye sockets to tighten and loosen quickly. This results in the rat's eyes physically boggling in and out of their skulls. If a rat is bruxing out of happiness and they start boggling, it means that they're a very happy rat. Rats groom each other to show their affection for their friends and family. Grooming is usually gentle licks and nibbles on the other rat's fur or person's skin. They often hold whoever they're grooming in place when they're paused to keep them still while they work. Not all rats swish their tails, and, like bruxing, it could mean many different things. But some rats swish their tails when they're being petted in the perfect spot. It's a slow and casual movement. Their tail flops around more than they actually wag. It just means that they're really happy and content where they are. The signs of a sleepy rat are a droopy lower lip, yawning and stretching, cuddling and snuggling, slitted or closed eyes, and pancake or potato rat, both of which are just sleeping positions. Lark, the rat being groomed in this video, is so relaxed that her mouth is hanging fully open and her bottom lip is drooping. Here you can see what it looks like from the front. The rat's lower teeth, as well as the tips of his incisors, are invisible. Next up is yawning, which is so universal that I'm only including it because rat yawns are adorable. This rat looks like he's just waking up from a nap. He stretches, yawns, and then settles back in for some contented bruxing and boggling. Most rats prefer stretching vertically to laterally. They usually stand on their back feet and stretch their hands above their heads, often yawning at the same time. Contrary to popular belief, rats are extremely cuddly. They enjoy snuggling with both their human and rat friends. They love snuggling in a pile of their friends, and you can often find the whole mischief stuffed into a nest that really shouldn't fit so many rats. This one doesn't really need an explanation. Sleepy rats don't keep their eyes open fully. And here's our potato rat sleeping in a ball, and our pancake rat. Rats are very intelligent animals, which makes them extremely curious about their surroundings. They lean towards the object of their curiosity with their whole bodies, even their whiskers curve forward. They stand upright and sniff to catch new scents. They often use their mouths to investigate, and they love to explore. If a rat is confident while he explores, either because he's been in the area before, or because he's a naturally brave rat, it's more of a casual affair, and he'll often stop to taste and nibble new things. But a lot of rats are nervous even when they're excited about exploring, and these rats tend to move quickly. They're prepared to sprint to safety at the slightest hint of danger. They stop to listen, and often check in with safety, whether it's their human or an enclosed space. Rats rely far more on their sense of smell, hearing, and touch through their whiskers than sight. So when these boys are investigating their window patio, they frequently stand on their back legs to catch a better scent on the breeze. You can see how Kit, the gray rat, is leaning forward toward whatever scent is interesting him. This is a Rex rat, which means his fur and whiskers are naturally curlier than standard rats, but even taking his naturally curly whiskers into account, you can see how he's curving them towards his human's hand while he's sniffing her. One of a rat's favorite ways to investigate new things is to nibble it, and, if it seems promising, pick it up and bring it back to one of their nests. These two girls are exploring their newly cleaned cage. You can see that they're completely relaxed and don't freeze or seem ready to run into safety. Instead, they are interacting with their environment, digging in the dirt, and climbing around happily. I'm grouping nervous exploring in the next section because a lot of the behaviors overlap with cautious or scared rats. Scared and cautious rats often lean back, flinch and freeze at the slightest sound or movement, dash for cover, stay in the dark and enclosed spaces like boxes. They steer near the walls when moving around a room, they fidget, swish their tails, poop and pee out of fear, and brux and boggle. I don't have any videos of the last three behaviors, but when rats swish their tails out of nervousness, it tends to be quicker and more hurried than a happy tail wag. The sounds of a rat bruxing out of fear may be a little harsher than content bruxing, but it's hard to tell the two apart with no other information. This rat loved exploring, but she found it a little scary. She stays close to the wall or door, stops frequently to assess the situation and listen for danger, freezes, and then eventually runs back to a more enclosed area. These babies don't know their human well yet, so they're still a little nervous. When she tries to touch one of them on his head, he leans away from her and retreats into a darker, more concealed spot. The other baby stays inside his hide the whole time. This rat is also still a little wary and nervous. She is very still at first and then hides in her person's hair. She isn't terrified, but she's also not comfortable with being held quite yet. It's uncommon for a rat to be so scared that they shift around like this, but you can practically see the anxiety rolling off of his body. He can't seem to settle down, and his eyes remain wide open and alert. You can also see that he's taking fast, short breaths. As far as I know, this boy didn't ever really get over his fear of humans, and he bit a few times because he was so scared. Dominance is a very important aspect of a rat's social life. Instead of play fights, adults have dominance fights. These squabbles use many of the same moves and body language as a play fight, but it carries more meaning than a light-hearted wrestle. However, it's very rare for a dominance fight to spiral out of control or result in injury to either rat. In a way, these fights prevent real, dangerous altercations because they enable rats to settle their issues with simple posturing and shoving rather than biting. The main behaviors you'll see in a dominance fight are sidling, boxing, standoffs, pushing and shoving, pinning, power grooming, tucked heads, and piloerection, which is just a fancy word for puffy fur. The two rats in this video were just introduced, and you can see that the brown rat, Cricket, is slightly loom over the other rat, Fennec. Her body is stiff and her teeth are right next to his face. It's a threat that she never carried through with because Fennec had no qualms with letting her be dominant. This time when Cricket looms over Fennec, he responds by sidling into her. Sidling is when one rat crab walks into the other. It can be a way of diffusing the situation because it turns a face-to-face confrontation into a face-to-back one. It's easier to see everything in slow motion, so let's watch it again. Fennec stands up to smell something. Cricket is tense. Fennec notices her, and he stops sniffing to see what she's doing. Cricket immediately takes this as him trying to loom over her, and she makes herself higher than him. And then Fennec doesn't want to continue the confrontation, so he sidles into her, turning his back to her. This video is very interesting, and because there's so much happening in it, I'm slowing it down to 40% of the real speed so we can see everything. To make it easier to refer to the rats, the light one is still Fennec, the dark one is Joey, and the grey one is Kit. It starts off when Fennec goes down a steep slope and puts himself in an awkward position. Kit sees his chance and shoves him before he can fully regain his footing. When Fennec recovers himself, he goes up in the boxing position. Rat boxing is basically a sizing up and a test of wills. Fennec wins this particular match when Kit backs away. Fennec shoves him into the corner of the box and then looms over him. Kit responds by putting his face right next to Fennec's, and like in the last video, this makes Fennec uncomfortable enough that he sidles into Kit. This time he's sidling to continue the confrontation just to wear out the face-to-face interaction. Kit gives in and leaves. I didn't mention it before, but you can see that throughout the whole confrontation, Fennec has had slightly puffy fur. It's simply supposed to make him seem bigger to the other rats. Here's another example of a sidle. This one is more dominant than the others because Jasper, the mostly white rat, doesn't get along with Joey that well. Jasper notices Joey is there and he approaches him in a way that puts them both head to shoulder. Joey flinches and leaves. He doesn't want to continue the confrontation. What I didn't notice the first time is that Joey flinches because Jasper nipped his shoulder a bit. It doesn't hurt, but the threat is still there, and Joey just doesn't want to take him up on it right now. This is another boxing match, this time between Fennec and Joey. Both of them have puffy fur, and it shows that they're both a little worked up by the confrontation. This is a video of Cricket pinning and power grooming Joey. Cricket is slightly puffy to make her seem bigger. Power grooming is different than regular grooming because the groomer is actually seizing small folds of skin between their teeth. It's not painful, but it is unpleasant. Joey doesn't want to escalate the situation, so he lies on his back, mostly still and obedient while Cricket grooms him. When she's satisfied that he's submitting to her with no complaints, she backs off and leaves him be. Here's another example of pinning and power grooming. I included this one because it shows rat curiosity. If two rats start squabbling, it's likely the rest of the mischief will flock towards them to investigate. This last behavior goes along with sidling very often. Joey and Cricket seem relaxed, but Jasper is perfectly still. His head is tucked close to his body and is angled towards his right, towards Cricket. He stayed like this for another 2 minutes before he realized that no one was trying to refute his dominance, and he eventually backed off. I only have one video for this section because 1, rat squabbles don't often escalate to the point of actual aggression, and 2, when rats are in a situation where they're being outright aggressive, people aren't usually going to be taking videos of them. Though rats don't resort to aggressive behavior when they have an issue with a rat they know, they are extremely territorial. If they are introduced to a new rat in an area they consider theirs, a serious fight, perhaps even to the death, would likely break out. But if they are introduced safely in a neutral territory, they will probably just spend some time sorting out dominance and then be able to move in together after meeting for a few days. Some signs of aggression in rats are bared teeth, as you can see the white and black rat in the cage doing. Huffing and puffing, hissing, arched backs. The black rat in this photo has an arched back. Piloerection, both of these rats have puffy fur. Biting, swishing tails, it'll be a faster swish than a happy, slow, casual swishing tail. And bruxing and boggling. The bruxing will probably sound harsher than happy bruxing. These two boys are angry and territorial because they don't like the rat on the other half of their cage being in their territory. Their tails are wagging, their backs are more arched than normal. The rat further back has slightly puffy fur, and it's likely that they're both huffing and puffing at the other rat through the bars. The signs that a rat is in pain varies a lot depending on how much pain they're in and where it is. For example, if they hurt their foot, they will react differently than if they experience post-surgery pain. Arched backs, lateral stretching, belly sucking, squinted eyes, lethargy, flattened cheeks, clenched whiskers, bruxing and boggling, and behavior changes are all indications that a rat is in pain. An example of a behavior change that a rat might experience is aggression towards other rats and or people. This rat appears to be in a significant amount of pain from how much she's sucking her sides in. Here you can see how rats squint their eyes, flatten their cheeks and faces, and bunch their whiskers, arching their backs when they're in pain. Now that I've gone over some of the basics of rat body language and behavior, we can go back to the other three sections that we need to know to best understand what a rat is thinking or feeling. These other parts are necessary because some behaviors, for example bruxing and boggling or swishing tails, can mean many different things. So you need to know the situation. What is happening around or to the rat? Is there a vacuum cleaner on, or perhaps a predator or another animal that might be scaring them, or causing them to act in a certain way? Is the rat in a new place, or meeting another rat that they haven't met before? What you might interpret as happy bruxing if the rat were in a familiar place could actually mean anxiety if they don't know their surroundings. Likewise, what you could interpret as affectionate grooming if they were cage mates is likely power grooming if it's on a rat they just met. If there is another rat, how are they acting? No matter how much time you spend with rats or try to understand them, you will never be as good at interpreting rats than other rats. How the other rats react to a situation can give you a pretty good clue about what a certain rat means. For example, fear spreads quickly within a mischief, so if one rat is bruxing for an unknown reason and then her friends start flinching, you might be able to assume that the first rat is anxious rather than content. The rat's personality is also a huge factor. Who is this rat? Every rat is an individual, and you'll never find two that are exactly alike in every way. What do they like or dislike? I know that Cricket likes being sprayed with water, so if she jumps as the water hits her, it isn't because she's scared, as it might be for another rat. Are they shy or confident? Do they like doing new things and meeting new people? If I took a shy rat and a confident rat, let's use Kit as our shy rat and Jasper as our confident one, to an unfamiliar place to meet new people, and they start bruxing. It's very likely that Kit is bruxing out of anxiety, while Jasper is doing it out of excitement and happiness. And then there's the rat's personal background. Is there anything that happened in the rat's past that may be affecting their current behavior? Rats have a good memory, and they can remember kindness and trauma alike. If they were mistreated, neglected, or abused, they will remember it, and it will affect how they behave. Likewise, if they were cared for and loved every day of their lives, they will be much friendlier. Were they socialized and handled when they're young? If a rat doesn't receive any human socialization until they are adults, they will take a lot longer to warm up to and trust people. Let's apply these 4 principles to an interaction I had with Fennec. Fennec was bruxing, boggling, and lying in his nest. I was gently petting him, his head and cheeks. I'd only adopted him a few days previously. We didn't know each other well, but I wasn't a stranger. Cricket, who bonded with him instantly, was snuggling with him and didn't seem distressed. She was mostly ignoring me, but she has been with me since she was 6 weeks old, so she trusted me. Thing is, I didn't know who Fennec was. I knew that he didn't like being picked up, but most rats need a bit of time before they're comfortable with a new person picking them up. I knew that he loved Cricket from practically the first night together, but other than that, he was pretty much a complete unknown. Most of the time, you do not know your rat's full background if you adopt or rescue them. Fennec was surrendered with his brothers to me in the rat rescue when he was about 7 months old. I know nothing about the first 7 months of his life. His brothers had hormonal aggression and bullied him to the point that his foster chose to keep him separate from them. He was alone for about a month and neutered to prevent him from developing hormonal aggression before I adopted him. This isolation could play into why he bonded with Cricket so quickly. Anyways, just looking at his behavior, the situation, and his background, it's not an unreasonable thing to assume that Fennec was bruxing and boggling out of happiness. And I would have continued to believe that is what he meant if his resolve hadn't broken and he hadn't lashed out and bitten me. Fennec was bruxing and boggling out of fear. He was terrified of me. The unknown factor was what made the difference between me understanding him properly and me continuing to pet him even though he hated it. Now that I've known from him for almost 2 years, I know that he would never want to be petted, especially by someone he doesn't trust. It's simply not who Fennec is. It takes him months to learn to trust someone, and even then, even when he's not scared of being held or touched, he prefers being left alone when he's trying to sleep. I completely misunderstood Fennec because I was missing a vital piece of the puzzle. Next up, let's do the same thing with a situation involving Jasper. Jasper approached 4 rats who were cuddling in a nest. His fur was puffy, his head tucked, he presented his side first, and his movements were intimidatingly slow. He knew all 4 rats. He had been living with them for months and occasionally grooms them affectionately. All of the rats were relaxed and sleepy before he arrived, but when he appeared, Joey reacted by nipping at Jasper's face and sidling into him. As for Jasper's personality, he's completely human-centric and often socially awkward around other rats. He rarely cuddles with the other rats and maintains his position as the dominant rat of the mischief. With these 3 pieces of information, it's reasonable to think that Jasper is just being a jerk and dominant. But, like with Fennec, you may misinterpret him because you don't have all the information. In this case, his background is the important part. The day before this event, I put him in the other rat's favorite nest in the hope that he would snuggle with them, and most of them had piled on top of him. He spent a few hours snuggling with them before he left to sleep by himself. And then there's also the fact that his social awkwardness likely derives from early trauma and isolation from other rats. He was probably separated from his mother and siblings too soon, and bought from a feeder bin as snake food. He was then housed with a snake for an undetermined amount of time, but the snake wouldn't eat him. I got him after and saw an ad about a free rat, as either a pet or a feeder. I couldn't introduce him to my other rats for another month, so he had no socialization with other rats from at least 8 to 13 weeks old. But I wouldn't be unsurprised if he hadn't met another rat since he was 4 or 5 weeks old. The point is, he missed out on a lot of early socialization. He knows how to interact with humans better than he knows how to interact with rats. Now that you can take all of this information into account, his body language as he approached the other rats, his relationship with the rats, his social awkwardness, and the fact that he had enjoyed snuggling with them the day before, you can come to the conclusion that he was trying to join them in his nest, but he didn't exactly know how to approach them. He acted dominant in an effort to force his way in. In conclusion, rats aren't simple creatures, so it isn't easy to understand them. But if you take everything you know about them into consideration, you can decipher meaning from their movements and behavior. Watching videos and reading articles can help you understand them better, but the number one best way to understand your rats is to spend time with them. Play with them, snuggle with them, or just hang out together. Understanding ultimately comes from hands-on experience, and the more you bond with your rat, the more you will know that what he or she is thinking and feeling. Finally, I want to thank everyone who helped me make this video by donating photos and videos of the rats. It was really helpful, and I couldn't have done it without you.